The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors. It's coming. All these voices.
My name is James Hershey. Right back. I know how to do it. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody tonight?
On tonight's episode, we are going to be joined by a very special guest. We're going to be joined by Dogman researcher Chris Edge and host of the Venomous Fringe. How you doing, brother?
Good evening, guys. How you guys doing tonight?
Now, Chris told us that he has some new information, some new eyewitness accounts, and some pretty awesome intel on the Dogman for us. So we booked him as soon as we possibly could because we're starting to really get into this Dogman thing. At first, we were kind of half in, just putting our toes in the water a little bit. But the more I learn about this, the more I love it. So I'm psyched to hear this, Chris. So without further ado, brother, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you give us some of this intel.
Okay, well, for starters, for all the viewers out there who are not familiar with who I am, like James Hershey said, I am a Dogman researcher. I'm part of the NADP, the New Jersey Charter. You can find my intel on the NADP.com under the chapters, and that's where you'll find me, basically, for any information in regards to sightings, prints, evidence, whatever you want to submit. I started getting into the field back in 2009, and I started going ahead watching werewolf movies, various movies, and I was very intrigued by them. And I believed to myself, I was like, wonder if these things were real, if these things did exist, and if these things do exist in general, of what would be the cause, like where would the origins be. You look at Europe in the 1600s with the entirety of gothic horror, werewolves, this and that, vampires. So it's a common link, and I was looking up information from Linda Godfrey, who is as we would call the queen of the Dogman universe, or whatever you want to call it, the queen of Dogman, because she was the one that broke out the story of the Beast of Bray Road, which was a popular road in Wisconsin, Elkhorn, Wisconsin, involving a reported werewolf-looking creature, but it's also been categorized as a Dogman, I guess, for the traits of its canine variation. And Michigan is another hot spot. In 1987, Steve Cook made an April Fool's joke of the legend of the Michigan Dogman, and then it opened up a whole bunch of sightings, and that's basically where it all began for that. But at the same time, though, for me, people like Linda Godfrey, and then there's also, and a big shout out goes to Vic Cundiff of Dogman Encounters Radio and Bigfoot Eyewitnesses Radio. Vic Cundiff, the host of those two shows respectively. You guys should also go check out his content too. He has a lot of knowledgeable facts and stuff with Dogman, and he's a very good guy. So you guys should go check out his content too. But going into what I've uncovered and what I've done, Basically, for everybody out there who's not familiar with the Pine Barrens is close to the border of Atlantic City and New Jersey, and the more of the swampy regions of southern Jersey. Now, the funny thing is about this is that the Pine Barrens is known for the Jersey Demon, the Jersey Devil, the most popular one with the Leeds Child, and then Paranormal Activity ghosts, reported mysterious paranormal events going on in the woods, Satanism, and everything like that. So there was also reports of reported Sasquatch in the area. And on a nice autumn night in November 2016, my friend, I'm going to call him Alex, he was he was just camping in one of the grounds with his other friend Howie, and they were making a campfire and whatnot, and they were going to go ahead and basically go out and call out to the night. You know, it was just one of those days where it was like go into there and go to bed and do whatever. So then, right before the fire, they were about to put it out. They were hearing a streaking noise, like something out of like bloody murder almost. And in the process, they were a little curious. They were like, let's go investigate. The other guy was like, no. Howie was like, let's just go and chin up and then get out of here because it didn't sound right. So my one friend, he goes into the woods with a flashlight, and Howie's right behind him. And these two guys, you never see how startled you are in a scary situation such as that. And it's like you have nowhere to go. It's that creepy. And especially if you're investigating something that you don't want to investigate, but to make sure that it's safe, which it isn't. So he shines his light on something that's rustling in the bushes. And the flashlight shines on this bat-like creature, which had like a snout, bat-like ears, or bat-like, a lot like bat. I didn't see if there's any wings. He didn't mention anything about that, but it did look like something out of a mutation. So this creature, whatever it was, it like snarled at him with these amber eyes, and my friend bolted with his other friend out of there, took their tent, took their belongings, packed up in the truck. But they did not leave. They left the fire going, and I think the other guy left his tent. I know my friend took his. That was basically it for that encounter. He told me what it was that he saw, and it looked like he said as a demon from hell, or like he said something you'd see in hell, or some. Well, to two margins, it's been a while since I've spoken to him about the story because now he has bad PTSD to the point where he can't even himself go out into the woods anymore because of how traumatizing that incident was. And keep in mind too that they were out in the woods from 6. It was they went there. They got off on land at 6, and they were basically in the starting out the fire by like 11:30 up to midnight. So, at the time, a quiet, like, the roads are quiet, so panicking is one thing. So for him, it's just like he doesn't like leaving. He likes to leave his job at dusk. So when he gets inside, it's dark out, so it doesn't go outside whatsoever. He'll eat inside at barbecues now, for the caution being. And I know that sounds crazy and ridiculous, but, I mean, people got to realize with the PTSD with these, when people see these things, is that it's tough. It's a tough situation because it's like when you come back from war and you have these flashbacks of what happened. My grandfather came back from Vietnam War, was never the same guy he went into. He was part of the Cuban Missile Crisis. People go through this trauma. PTSD is a thing. It happens in everything. If a car accident, for example, and now a Dogman incident. My friend is still going through the phases, and with the help of friends like myself and the help of a couple other guys too, he is very cautious still, but with the help and therapy, because he's not a guy to go to doctors and get medication. He would like to do natural remedy, which of course healing process by interventions or whatever, and to go the right way instead of purchasing antidepressants and whatnot. But other than that, though, to recap, that's the story of the Pine Barrens incident with my friend back in 2016.
Okay, so what about the new intel you have? The new are they new eyewitness accounts? Is that what you told me earlier?
Yes, the eyewitness account that we got this time, and I got one from the UK, and then I got another 2 that are from Jersey. One of them isn't really much of an encounter. It's just like a kind of a guess of an apparition or some sort with a Dogman. But I'll just go ahead and I'll read it through them all. So without further ado, I'll just go ahead and get into it. So the UK, there's a lot of incidents in the UK. I've spoken to this one woman who I'm going to call Melissa, who has had these encounters over in the UK on her lawn and on Yorkshire. She lives in South Yorkshire, and she lives in a village that has not a lot of houses, but very little of an estate. And the encounters that she started facing began in December of 2017. It began when one of the bulbs that they have right by their porch, when they have one of those fancy porches, the bulb that was on the side had fallen out, and they put it back in. It started to flicker, and then they put it back in once more, flickered once more, but then this time they forced it in, checked the wiring and all that, and it stayed. At first I thought that was a case of a paranormal or a supernatural type instinct, but I'll talk a little bit about Flesh and Blood and the supernatural Dogman, because this is kind of a thing where I feel it might be more aided at the supernatural. On February 6th, I had received another message from her, because we were contacting through Messenger. And one of the things I told her was to go out and buy surveillance cameras, put them around the perimeter, make sure that you have one by the light bulb that flickers, and make sure that if it does happen again, you got it on surveillance. And if there's anything out there, you know, you have at least 20 cameras in this big estate house by the village, so it would all work out properly. So then she tells me about her exhaust pipe. Her exhaust pipe underneath her Hyundai i800 8-seater van was torn apart. The husband got out of bed, and the dog was barking. They have a family dog. The dog just was barking. And when he got outside, he took a look, and he saw that the bumper, like the exhaust pipe, was completely tarnished. It had claw marks all over it, and it was very... It was a little grisly. The police, they called the authorities. The cops said didn't know what it was. They didn't see anything like that before. It could have been anything. And then the mechanic that fixed it was curious. He was like, I don't know what could do that. But it was a cautious thing because, of course, nothing. You don't want to go ahead and show that and then people instantly think, oh, because there's no bear around there. That's the thing. So it's an unusual animal that crawled through there, and it wouldn't be a cat, because the claw marks, and even if you guys want, I'll just show you the photographs. You see it, and those are deep claw marks. Nothing was said in March, but April passes on by, and then now here's where things get a little interesting. She has a daughter who has a disability. For some reason, I guess she had a episode where she had drawn a picture of a wolf, of a walking wolf, a Dogman sketch. Now, if you guys ever want to take a look at some of Linda Godfrey's sketches, there's a sketch that looks like a Dogman on its tippy toes. That was the same sketch that I had seen that she had sent me in this message. And in the process, she was telling me how she drew this, and she went on to mention that her daughter never watched any werewolf movies except for seeing the costumes out for Halloween. And then she began to do these pitched shrieks and spinning around and going underneath the table to try and stop her. It would result in a physical situation because of the disability. So that was that incident. I've personally believed that if she did have an encounter, that it was clearly not a bad one, or if she just had a dream, because they appear in dreams sometimes. I've had dreams with them involved, and it's a pretty interesting dream too. It can mean anything, but if it leads to a sighting, then you would have to have dreams more frequently. But if they're all constantly, every week, but if it's a frequent dream, like a dream that's not really seen but frequent sometimes, but then it stops, then that could be an indication that they're just part of your imagination, your fascinations with them. I'm not a psychiatrist, but as talking in the groups and the comments and whatnot, that's what I guess a lot of theories are going out with that. And I know that sounds crazy, but trust me, there's a lot of theories out there that are insane. The next day, she sends me another message telling me about the house, because I had asked her about an Indian burial ground, or if there was any history behind the house, and she told me that there was this butcher that lived in this house. He was a meat cutter. Slaughter sheds were all over the place, and the house was built in 1906, so currently 112 years old, and it was basically home also to some old mining pits. 6 days later, she texts me, sending me that her dog, the family dog, is freaked out, constantly barking. It won't leave her side, virtually laid on her like a cat, immense feeling of dread and fear she felt, which is common in these type of encounters with dogmen. She felt like crying and having a breakdown. The kids were upset too for silly situations. The daughter who had the drawing was upset that she was sleeping next to her, yet she couldn't explain why. Then all the windows closed and got aircon on as I'm sweating. So while she said she was sweating so bad, I'm reading down the dialogue of what she sent me, by the way. So I do apologize if some words are a little out. But basically, she was sweating and she was pretty terrified. And then she told me that a day prior, she had the local vicar from the village come and bless the house around the morning. At first, I thought that this was probably a Wendigo or a skinwalker or something fascinating with this area. I mean, I think it could either be either or, even though that I could also point out that it could be anything. So I'd also put Dogman 2 as a flesh and blood. But if it was something supernatural, though, I mean, there's something on the property itself, and the Dogman is either attracted to it, or this is a Wendigo or a skinwalker that's attracted to this. The Victor came in and blessed the house, and then nothing was happening for a little bit. And then she mentions to me another 4 days later that she and the husband decided to not want to live in the house anymore. The reason being is that the fact that the night prior, that the family was woken up with a dog growling and barking downstairs. There was a noisy, heavy sound outside their bedroom, a smashing sound. The husband jumped out of bed and looked out the window, and he saw the 4 roof slates had been smashed onto the ground, meaning that this thing was trying to get into the bedroom or somewhere in the house upstairs. And then the surveillance cameras were all over the place, and basically they were facing out. So they made that decision to not live there and spend the rest of their day up until they're moving. They're actually selling the house, so it's going to be in July. So they're going to be at her husband's mom's house up until July for this situation. The conclusion of this story, though, is that there was an interesting claw mark on the shed. And she mentioned that her husband, if he drinks beer a lot, he'll pee in this bucket instead of going to the bathroom inside the house if he's peeing out in the if he's out in the shed. And then the Dogman clawed on it, and then she noticed that there was urine in the bucket, but it wasn't from the dog, nor was it from the husband. The husband did a urine neutralizer test, and it was not coming from the dog at all, or him. So basically, as of right now, this is a situation in the UK that's very frightening. And I gave her the best motivation to try to move on and get out with it, but at the same time, it's hard to convince people because of the fact that for them, it's rough to go ahead and make the decisions because they don't know what to do. Now, I told her if the place was possessed or something, that to not really panic if you're getting out, but you should warn the new owners. She contacted the new owners, this Melissa girl, and she said the new owners were like, oh, we were waiting for you to talk to us or whatever, and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, she tried to ask, well, what happened in this house that you guys left so early, and they never responded. But I told her to leave a note for the new owners in case they have to deal with the same stuff, because I feel it's a little bit of supernatural, and a Dogman's attracted to the area. That's the type of energy I see. We see energy with them, sometimes a manifestation of light bulbs, video camera surveillance and whatnot. She sent me a video also of orbs and lights manifesting, so that's another one too. But that's just an example. That's one story, guys. That is what I've been working on for the past 5 months.
Is all of this, all that you just described, is that all happening in the same location?
Yes.
And what kind of location is it? Is it like a place out in the woods? Is it right in the middle of a city or town, or do you know?
It's a village. It's a village up in South Yorkshire in the UK. So it's a village, and that's all that was furthermore said. It's all it is because when I gave the permission to tell the story, when she did, I guess she didn't know further details. Just it's a village, and it's in the South Yorkshire in the UK.
Hey, I'm trying to piece together what could be going on, because you have activity that would be either a haunting or a demonic presence or something like that there, but then you also have something that would be a flesh and blood creature as well. Because like with the urine in the bucket thing, that is something that canines or cats would do. It's a way of marking the territory. So that, to me says that that part is flesh and blood, but this other stuff doesn't sound like flesh and blood at all. Now, as far as it being like a skinwalker, I highly doubt that, because that's more of a Native American phenomenon that's usually here in the States. Wendigo is something that you're going to find out in a forest type situation or up in the mountains. That's why I was asking what the location was like, because if it's in the middle of a populated area, the chances of it being a Wendigo probably aren't that good. But if it's out in a small village that's up in the mountains somewhere or out with a bunch of forest behind it, then that might be a possibility of it being a Wendigo. You might also be dealing with a shifter or something like that in this situation.
Right. Well, for the record, too, with the village, I don't think there's a lot of land over there. Just it's mostly like one village, and then another mile, a mile and a half, there's another village. So like not like mountains, but like around well, you could say a little bit of a mountain or like a plain. But I don't know if that would kind of apply also to the whole Wendigo.
Well, see, Wendigos like deep forest areas because they like seclusion. They have like these underground dens, so to speak, where they snatch people and they like to take them down there and feed on them for quite a long time. So they are a creature that needs a lot of seclusion in order to be successful and to operate. So their hunting grounds are usually found either in mountainous areas or in areas with a lot of forest area, to where they're not going to run into as many people, because they need that location. What it sounds like to me is that one half of this is either some sort of haunting or a demonic situation, like I said, or maybe, I don't know if they have children or whatever, but maybe it's a poltergeist situation as well. Because a lot of times with poltergeist, what you have is it's actually a young female in the house, like a female child that is actually causing the activity through telekinesis, and she doesn't even realize it. Most of your poltergeist cases aren't actual hauntings. They're actual psychic phenomenon that is done by a small child, and the child doesn't even realize that they're doing it. So if they have small children, you could be dealing with something like that, with the light bulb falling out, the flickering. I'd be interested to know if there was anything like chairs moving around in the home, or stuff just falling over for no reason, that kind of thing, because that would point that it very well could be that.
I contact her almost every day. I'll let her know. I'll ask her about that, if there's been chairs moving, cabinets opening, or whatever. Because she did show me a video of orbs the other night, which was startling to me, because that's why I think it might be a paranormal activity and a flesh and blood creature interested on the field of this village.
Yeah, lots of times when you have orbs, it is some sort of spectral activity that's going on, but there have been cases where orbs can be called psychically as well. So that could also be poltergeist, but most likely that's a paranormal phenomenon with like a ghost or some sort of haunting. But if she moves to another location and the activity continues in the new location, then that would be a pretty good indication to me that it is a phenomenon that's being caused by the child. Right. Telekinesis, and not a haunting. Now, if you have demonic activity, a lot of times they'll follow you. So if the activity continues in a new home, it might also be demonic. The best thing to do is to bring in a psychic medium, or to bring in a priest that is trained in exorcisms and trained in house blessings and stuff like that. And they can kind of get a better read on the ground in the actual house to let you know what's going on.
Absolutely, and I'll bring it up to her, because, and even if you want to talk to her, it's totally up to you. I'll let her know about that, because that's the thing with me. Like, I do feel on the Dogman perspective that there is something there, but on reference to if the child, because she does have an 11-year-old daughter, and that's the one that has the disability, and she has a fear almost, like with how she acts, with drawing that, fascinated with it, and then I guess doing the howls and whatever, and that's what's bothering this Melissa girl, is because she never acted like that before. Even in other tantrums, that was one thing that stood out to her. So it could be her, who knows? But I'll send her a message and tell her about that, because if that's the case, then there's more to the story, and it's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you have multiple phenomena going on. Maybe the urine bucket thing might be a Dogman. I don't know enough about Dogman to say definitively, but I know that is activity that is done by canines, and it's also activity that is done by a lot of feline species. Anything from house cats all the way up to larger cats like jaguars, tigers, lions, that kind of thing. They will urinate to mark their territory. And all forms of dogs, from house dogs to to wolves, to coyotes, they all do the same as well. They will urinate to mark their territory because they have pheromones and scents in the urine that tells other animals in that species that this is my territory. Stay away. So that could be what that is. But I'd be interested also to know that if she is dreaming about the Dogman and she is imitating Dogman and stuff like that, then maybe somehow if she does have psychic ability, she's actually drawing this thing in. Almost like a psychic dog whistle, so to speak. I know that's a corny line, but that's kind of what this equates to, is maybe if the paranormal activity is actually her, and it's a poltergeist situation with her causing it through telekinesis. If that's the case, then maybe psychically she's calling out to the Dogman by the imitations and the dreams and actually bringing this thing into the home. And he's kind of sniffing around, trying to find out what's going on, why he's being called in, and he smells the urine in the shed, and so he decides he's going to mark the territory. To me, that just kind of makes sense, but I don't know if dogmen do that. I'm not sure, because I don't have that information, and I don't know if anybody does. There's a lot of people that have way more knowledge on Dogman than I do.
If you're curious, ask me any questions you got. Same with you, old boy. I don't know what your views are on this right now.
Sounds like it's all the above. It doesn't sound like it's just Dogman. There's something around this area. There's some kind of presence altogether that's attracting this. It could be the kid. It could be an entity. It sounds like there is something demonic there also, not just the Dogman, but it's attracting the Dogman. All I'm going to say is it sounds like there's more than just him. It's something else. It's two things, or two or three things. It could be a demonic. It could be and it's attracting the Dogman, because what it comes out with the Dogman, me and James what we have known about him is that it seems like it's only certain times you see him. Some of the people we've read and the witnesses have said that they've had some kind of iron or something and it goes away. So it's starting to make me wonder if the Dogman is fresh in blood. I believe that. But it also has something to do with that side of the paranormal. It's also not, it's all mixed in one, and it shows up because something is in that house. So it's attracting it. Maybe it's the girl who's attracting ghosts and poltergeists or demons, and this creature comes also, it's attracted to it. I think they're all mixed into one. That's what I'm starting to get to with what you've been telling me with the story, and it sounds like it, because Dogman does, the urination and stuff like that, but the other part of it, the paranormal stuff, that's different. There's something there, but maybe this is all put into one. It's everything together. And it's just where this place is. Maybe something happened at that house. Maybe it's a haven for all this stuff. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
There was an eyewitness account that I read that came from the Black Forest in Germany. And this guy said that he was walking through the Black Forest, and he had a Dogman encounter multiple times at different points in time. And he said one thing that they were doing was they were actually calling to him psychically in his mind. Through telepathy, they were calling to him and calling him into them to where they were. They never heard him or anything. They just kind of hung out. But they actually called him in, according to this eyewitness account that I read. So if that is true, if that eyewitness account is not bogus, if it's a true account, then that means that the Dogman is able to communicate through telepathy. It has psychic abilities. If that's the case, then it could very well be a two-way street between this little girl and the Dogman. They could be communicating back and forth. And it manifests in her dreams, possibly. His attempts to contact her might manifest in her dreams, and that's why she's imitating what she saw in her dreams and reaching out to him and calling him in. That could be a possibility.
And you know what? That's actually a pretty good analogy, and I didn't think about it like that, because when I was speaking to Melissa, I did not want to scare her in a way and take some time to figure out the real answer. Why is she why did she do what she did? Why did she draw that creature? And what you said, Hershey, makes a lot of sense, actually, because it could possibly be. And because you guys have been in the paranormal field much longer than me, and clearly much longer than Melissa, that you would know more about it. And that's why it's intriguing, because that easily could be the case. Why would it be that she's doing all this? Because she's probably speaking through it telepathically in relations to what it's doing in its dreams, like you mentioned, and how it acts. I am kind of curious to see when they do move how it relates out, because that's when I would definitely, I'll talk to the both of you If there were to be an incident, I'm hoping not, but if there were, that would be something I think we all should have to kind of collaborate with, because that's a very scary case right there
Oh,
of trying to figure out what to do.
absolutely. If activity continues at a new place, then we need to really investigate it and get more information and try to figure out what's going on to help this woman. And when we have some sort of solution or more information on what's going on at the new location, we'll bring you back on and we'll have another show so that the audience is updated so they know what's going on, because they're going to be invested in the story as well. So we'll definitely do that. We've got about a half-hour show left, so let's move on to the next witness account.
Okay, so this one. Now, this happened. This was a girl. I'm going to call her Andrea. This encounter happened over 6 years ago, roughly between the margin, but she told me this last year, so around the margin of 2011 or 2010, depending on how you want to put it. She was coming home from her boyfriend's house at the time. She was driving down 539 Tuckerton. On this road, it's all dirt. Then there's a small, back road, and it just takes you all the way down a long, narrow section. So then next thing you know, she makes this one turn, and she sees on the corner a creature on its hind legs with a deer in its mouth. And it looked like a cross between a werewolf and a bear. And it was over 6 feet tall, had to have been at least close to maybe 600 pounds. It freaked her out so bad it had tall ears like a wolf. So I was thinking maybe she had seen a canine variant with a bear hybrid. So that's that encounter with that one. The next encounter I got is coming from a cop. His name is Albert. That's what I'm putting him as the alias. He has 2 stories. Now, the first story occurred in the 90s, but he found out the truth about it right before 2005, 2006. Albert had pulled over a group of teenagers who were driving off of Monmouth County, off of one of the back roads. They pulled over to the side of the road. What happened was that the passenger had to go out to the bathroom, and then when he came back inside, one of the girls in the back turned her head towards outside and noticed this creature coming towards the car. She screams. The driver floors it. It gets out of the area, but the creature continues to chase them. And it stops chasing them for a little bit, and then I guess it just stays and analyzes and observes, which as a result, the Dogman, or whatever you want to call it, the Bear Man or Dogman Bear or whatever, that's a different variation of one. They were doing 60 miles per hour on a 45 mile per hour road. The police officer, Albert, pulled them over, and they lied and said there was a big black bear in the area, went to go to the bathroom, and the bear came charging at them. So that's why they got out of the Dodge. And he investigated, and he didn't see anything there. By this point, I think the creature was just passing through, crossing, so I don't think it was going to stay there much longer unless, he was waiting for prey. And then the passenger reunited with this cop a few years later in 2005, or 2006, whatever one, and then he told the truth about it. And then the cop then told him that there was an incident involving a trucker who was driving down off the same road, probably about another half a mile away before the encounter they had in the 90s. And the trucker saw this creature kneeling on the road, on the left-hand side, and then it got up, shined the amber eye shine on him, and then leaped onto the other side of the road, where the trucker almost hit it if he didn't swerve left. He got in position of his car, thank God, but the creature kind of, it leaped and just ran off into the woods. The description of that one was 8 feet tall with pointy ears, yellow eyes, and resembled. And now this is what the description of what teens saw. The trucker didn't really get a good description, but he did see it was pretty tall. But in the 90s encounter, they said 8 feet tall, pointy ears, yellow eyes, and resembled the werewolf from the Bad Moon movie, which was new at the time. Those 2 are just another list of encounters I've had recently. I've shared. There was another encounter I was going to share, but I didn't have permission to do it. Other than that, though, that's basically the encounter so far I got.
Yeah, they got lucky. They got real lucky, because I had an encounter with what appeared to be a werewolf-like creature one time, and it actually ran up out of the woods and jumped on the back of my car, and it held on and was looking through my back windshield. And I had my buddy, the guy who actually does the music for our show, John Hammond. He was with me that night. It was back right out of high school, and we were kind of cruising around trying to pick up chicks, and this thing jumped on the back of the car and was staring at us through the back windshield. and I just started swerving all over the damn place. And finally, the thing flew off and hit the ground and rolled and got up and ran away. And I never could find it to know where it went or exactly what it was. But when it come running across the field, when it jumped onto the car, I swear it looked to me like a giant werewolf running. It was like 7-8 foot tall at least. It was big. And it was just running out from the woods, and it just jumped up on the back of my car. And John was scared to death. He didn't talk for like a half hour, 45 minutes after I shook the thing off. And I pulled over after that, and I went looking for it, and I never could find it. The interesting thing was, when I got back to town, I went over the car real good with the flashlight and everything, and there was actually blood and hair on the back of my car to where the thing had grabbed a hold and scraped on the way down, and there was claw marks going down the back hood of the car where it slid off, where it had tried to keep a hold. It was like these deep gouges in the metal. It was insane. So they got extremely lucky.
Yeah, that's pretty lucky because it could have killed you, dude. And another thing is the Dogman. The thing it sounds like in the UK. Let's bring this back up to is in Michigan Dogman, but there's also the Bay Road Beast in Wisconsin. What I was going to ask you is, do you think that's the same thing, or you think that's just a werewolf? What might be in the UK is maybe not the Dogman, it might be a werewolf. And what, James, you got attacked, sounds like you got attacked by a werewolf. The Bay Road Beast sounds different to what they say than the Dogman. But they're right next to each other. But now they're saying you can see it in Europe, they've seen it in other states. So do you think this is the same creature, or they're both different? What do you think, Chris, about that?
Dogmen and werewolves I like to identify as two different creatures. Dogman is a creature that's spotted both day and night. It's doesn't have the ability on a full moon to manifest from man to wolf. And there's also various different variations of them that stand out in a breed, like a hybrid breed, like similar to dogs, with different breeds, and cats with different breeds. There's reported people who've seen them in a bear man, or a dogman bear, or one that resembles a bear, but like a dogman type attribute. And then there's another one where one resembles a gudgeon. I don't know if you guys know what a gudgeon is, but
no, I don't.
That is a much more like a bamboo-looking one, a bamboo-looking Dogman-Sasquatch mix. Sometimes it's referred more as a Sasquatch. If you've seen the Beast of Seven Shoots photograph, that is what is believed to be a gudgeon. That is the infamous Beast of Seven Shoots photograph, but there's ones that resemble them. And then, so personally, I feel that Dogmen are the separate entity, because with werewolves, we get the whole thing of the full moon, we get the metamorphosis, we get the not the shapeshift, but like the different traits. You can identify who a werewolf could easily be if you take a good look, or if you can analyze it through, micro of understanding of somebody's attributes, body language. I like to kind of classify them as two different creatures. As for like the Bray Road Beast and whatnot, I'm a little convinced that might actually be a bit of a werewolf. The Bray Road Beast has never been seen in daytime, reportedly. All of the encounters that have been seen with the Beast of Bray Road, have been at night. Now, majority of these encounters ironically fall on a full moon. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like these were creatures that were manifested for a full moon, because most of the encounters are seen on full moons. There was one case with the Beast of Bray Road involving a woman who was trick-or-treating that night. She was picking up a trick-or-treater. She went to go change the cassette tapes. The next thing you know, she hits this creature on Bray Road. She gets out of the car to investigate. Luckily, her bumper, her entire front was not demolished. The creature gets up and starts to charge after her. She gets into the car, and she starts to drive off. The creature jumps on and leaps on top of the roof, and then because it was wet earlier that night, the creature slid off, but it was a full moon that night. And then there was another case where she saw it again, same thing, crouched on the ground, looking right at her, traveling through Bray Road, and it was an airy presence. Some people also notice that when they look at you, that they give you the body language type of like, hey, I know who you are, I'll take you down, stop looking at me, you move forward. Some people have that trait with them, which is why I think people, when they see these things, it's kind of the how I see it is that they always say the encounters feel like they're 3 to 4 minutes, but it's really 60 seconds because your eyes are gazed into this creatures, and the whole telepathic thing going on is another thing too. They're notable for that. There was a case briefly, I forgot to mention it to you when you brought it up. There was a case in the UK involving a young girl, not too far from South Yorkshire, where this little girl was being spoken to by a dog man saying, "Hey, come outside and play with us. It's okay to play with us." And it didn't fully happen because of the fact that it's a scary scenario. It's a kid that could easily be in mortal danger. Now, there's also no truth or no proof. There's been some skepticism around that story, so I don't know how true it is. But what I will say is that it's a very intimidating process because these things have the ability, if possible, to capture kids. You hear the missing 411 all the time. You know about that, the David Politi books and whatnot. So it's a very frightening and very scary scenario being played out.
Wait a minute. Did you say that one of the kids said the dog man told her to come out and play with him? That sounds like a shapeshifter. A skinwalker would do that.
I thought so too. I mean, but here's the thing. I don't know how accurate that story is. That was one of the more. It was on Dogman Encounters, and it was one of the more well-known stories in the UK. But it's unknown how true it is. That's the thing. That's why I'm only leaving it with like an open mind, because we'll never know for sure. The eyewitness stopped talking to people.
Well, James, I mean, that does sound like a shapeshifter or skinwalker because he's calling her name and telling her to come out. And that's something of a trait that they do. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's classic skinwalker behavior. One thing they like to do is they'll camp out outside and they will call to you in your mind. Psychically, they'll call to you and try to get you to come out to them. And then they will attack you and kill you. And what's interesting about that is you say that you're skeptical of the report. You don't know how true it is. But that particular ability of skinwalkers is not one that is well known. That is something that you would have to actually know the abilities of a skinwalker very well, have talked to shamans or grown up like I did in the native community to where you know these legends backwards and forwards in order to know that. That's not something you could just look up real quick on Google and find out, okay, skinwalkers can do this. To me, that tells me that report might have some validity to it, because that's not something a child would just be able to quickly find to invent a story about. That's one of those things that you kind of got to go a little deep in the research to know that they have that ability.
I agree. It easily could be. But the thing is that it's a story I haven't really followed. That's just an example of a story that's been reported in a case like that, where it was intense, that part where it got a little out of hand, where it could have easily been catastrophic. But that's basically all the stories I have for right now that I've been given permission to. But with any questions you guys have or, want to throw at the shot at the title, go for it, because this is basically... that's why I'm here almost too, besides to answer any questions you guys got.
The thing that makes this kind of, and any Dogman encounter kind of confusing in a way, is there's so many different creatures that in a quick encounter can be mistaken for a Dogman. You have, obviously, werewolves. They're very similar. You have Sasquatches, which, are big and hairy and wide, and they can be mistaken as well. And then you also have shifters, which can appear in that form. You have skinwalkers, which can definitely appear to look just like a werewolf. So there's several different things that it could be. The thing about Dogman is it's more of a newer phenomenon that's going on, so there's not a whole lot known. There's information out there, but we don't know about Dogman like we know about werewolves, for example. I mean, there's centuries and centuries of information on werewolf, of different cases. I mean, you can go all the way back to the Middle Ages to the witch trials, and they had werewolf witch trials, and you can actually read the court documents from that time period where they show you all the evidence and everything. And it's fascinating stuff, but we just don't have that yet with the Dogman. It's starting to get better because there's a lot more witness accounts that are coming, but we just don't really have that. Now, one question I have about Dogman is I've heard multiple times from multiple people, and you've said it on this show tonight, that there are different variations of Dogman. You have some that look like dogs, some that look like bears almost, some that look like other things. Do you think that it could be the reason for that is the same way with human beings, how we're all the same species, but you have different variations, different colors? You have white people, you have black people, you have Latinos, you have Asians, you have all these different groups that are similar, but they look different, but we're all the same species. Do you think that that's the case with Dogman as well? Do you think that could explain the different variations?
I think so. We have right now a chart that was created for, it was in, and I think Vicundiv helped with it too, a chart where it has 7 different types. You have 3 type 3 variants, which are basically like your Sasquatch looking type, your dog looking type, like Chow type. And then you have the canine variants that resemble more of your wolf and your coyote and whatnot. And then there are the 3 canine variant types are as close to a canine, dog, and a bit of a werewolf. But the soldier type, the canine variant 4, is the one you got to look out for, as it's more of like a rogue soldier that will kill and do anything. It's normally, they also call it a fathead, so that's another thing too. Those are the more deadlier ones. But I think that there are more than just 7 variants. I mean, I believe there's a bear man. I believe there's a mutant, a hybrid version of one mixed in with reptilian. I mean, who knows? Reptilian dogmen. It's a possibility. We have the Honey Island swamp monster reportedly to be a hybrid of a primate and a reptile. It could easily work out both ways, but I am personally, I'm convinced that there are more than 7 types.
One of my theories on what Dogman might be is I think that it might be some sort of genetic experimentation done by the government. Whether it's our government or the government of other countries, probably both. Because you know how that works. If we do something, Russia's going to do it too, China's going to do it too, and vice versa. We all kind of compete. So I think that it might be some sort of genetic manipulation, and that explains some of these different variants as well. What do you think of that theory and that idea that Dogman is not a natural creature, it is something that was created in a lab by governments of the world?
The thing is that, and I'm gonna go around the question, but I'm gonna kind of explain a little bit. Like, we all know of the whole thing with the Anubis, the underworld, and whatnot. Many people believe in the religious views that it was a creature created by God, the Anubis and whatnot, an ancestor. Clearly, there was just some sort of a snitch, or a stitch, of course, of just where or what they are. Because it's hard to, it's really, in a way, it's hard to explain. Because it's one of the hardest questions of, like, genetic experimentation, because there's very little evidence to support it. You know, the genetic experimentation, the possibility for fatheads, they could be the ones, if the flesh and blood, because, but also, too, in LBL, there are bunkers that are used to either capture these creatures or to just keep them in shelter for a possible capture for an experimental program. Now, we have heard the rumors of the super soldier conflict for over 50 years. The super soldier formula has been a big phenomenon. And many people assume that the fathead soldier dogmen are super soldiers, that they will be the super soldiers of tomorrow for a war or for a small conflict. And I know that sounds like crazy talk, but you know, these are theories that are posted on a daily basis with this creature. I have a feeling that some might be genetically modified, but then there's also some that it's hard to explain because it can also be a creature created by man, too. It just depends on how you see it. But genetic experimentation-wise, maybe.
We know for a fact that there are human-animal chimeras that have been created by the government. We know that because there are declassified government documents which state that there were human-animal chimeras created by the government. So we know that it goes on. Now, whenever you say that, people automatically say, oh, conspiracy theory, you're crazy. But all they have to do is do the research. They can find the documents on their own. They are out there. Okay, it has been admitted by our government that this has been done. I've heard people say, well, if you look at the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, there's pictures of men with dog heads, and in a lot of the old tablets and stuff like that, you can find it. But those were like representations of different Egyptian gods, like Osiris and Ra, and I don't believe that those are the same creatures that we have today that is known as Dogman. The reason I don't believe that is because if if they had existed since the time of ancient Egypt and before, and that is the same creatures we have now. If that was the case, there would be a long line of sightings of these creatures going all the way back. But we don't see that. We see it's more recent that the sightings started up of this, which that is one thing that makes me think that maybe it is genetic manipulation. I'll get your comment on that, and then we will start to wrap up because we're almost out of time.
What is it you're asking?
The argument that was made was that you see in the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs found on the pyramids and the different tablets that you had men with the head of dogs, and that proves that Dogman has existed since ancient Egypt. I think that's a fallacy because you don't have that line of sightings going all the way back. There's just not the eyewitness accounts going all the way back to that time to substantiate that. So what do you think of that theory that they go all the way back to ancient Egypt? Or do you agree with me that that was just a representation of the gods?
There's so many theories on where they come from, even in Native American lore. It's hard to know which is true, which is not true. So it's a theory, but until there's one that can show us the technology they have to send us back and see how it was, where it all began, then really we're just going to be stuck here with theories. But I do agree with what you're saying, though. It could be a genetically modified experiment, but it could also be something that's dated back long ago. But at the same time, it's just another theory. It's unknown. But it stands out, though. So it is something of interest, though. I will say that. But I do agree with what you're saying, though. But I also want to keep an open mind on the fact that they could have existed years ago. It's just hard to tell how or where the proof is for that.
There's a lot of lore that talks about them being protectors. You mentioned the Native American lore. A lot of times in the Native American culture, you would have shaman and other people in the tribe that could actually transform into wolves to protect the tribe and protect the land around the tribe. And then you also had a group of monks. I don't remember off the top of my head their name, but you had a group of monks that would transform into wolves, like dogmen, like creatures, in order to hunt down other creatures that were evil and were hurting human beings. So that, I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I can't remember the name of them. I wish I could off the top of my head. But that's a fascinating story as well. So we have a lot of different lore and different accounts that kind of back that up as well. But we're almost out of time. We're definitely going to have to do this again if we get more information, and even if we don't, probably. And I'm going to be doing Chris's show here in the near future. We don't really have a date set yet, but we can talk about some of this stuff on that show as well. And maybe on that show, I will talk about some of my encounters with different creatures over the years. I think that might be kind of interesting. We're almost out of time, brother, so if you want to go ahead and give your shout-outs.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into this episode of Staring Into the Abyss. I hope this was a better episode compared to last time, seeing those comments. I'm just saying. But hopefully we have a better episode this time around. And, I thought it was fun. I had a good time. But, folks, of course, feel free. Thank you again for taking a look at the video and enjoying it. And then feel free, guys, to check out Dogman Encounters Radio with Vic Cundiff. That's one of his top-notch shows, and that's where you'll find a little bit more about the Dogman phenomenon. Feel free to take a look at some of the Facebook Dogman groups, from Believers Only to Dogman X to Dogman Mystery to Michigan Dogman Only, the top 4 big groups in the Dogman realm. And then, to taping on the icing of the cake, The Venomous Fringe is airing its mini-series, The 10 Tales of Dogman, starting June 17th. Ladies and gentlemen, also keep in mind that the Venomous Fringe is not just dedicated to Dogman and horror stories. It's also dedicated to top 10s. It's also dedicated to wrestling rants, left and right. So, folks, if you are interested in other topics besides the paranormal and the unknown, take a look at the YouTube channel, and you will not regret it. James Ash was on my show just this past weekend, and now he's going to be back again. And I'm going to have Hershey on. We're going to set up some dates, and we'll make it happen. So, folks, please check out the Venomous Fringe.
Yeah, thanks for being on, Chris Edge. Yes, I was on his show. We just brought it out. It's on YouTube on our page. You can check out James Hershey Jr. You go and subscribe. You can listen to that and all our other shows. And thanks, Chris, for being on. I actually have another theory, but we didn't have enough time to talk about it. Maybe I'll talk about it this week on Sunday just for a little bit, because I got to get into more into the other part of what we were talking about, because I am still what I am, but we'll talk about that on another show. We won't take that time. I want to thank our fans, Para X. I love you guys. Shout out to my girlfriend, my friends. I love you guys. Good night. Misfits, Sugar Ladies, and Demon Hunters. I love you. Blessed be.
I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank Chris for coming on. I have a great time when I'm on the show with you, man. I from the heart. I honestly do. Because
Thank you.
Dogman is one of those subjects that I don't have a lot of knowledge on. And for me, and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn or anything like that, but for me, a subject that I don't have a lot of knowledge on is a rare occurrence because I research like a madman. And this is one of those things that I don't have a lot, but I have just enough to get in trouble with, you know. And I love learning, and I love doing this. I'm looking forward to doing the Venomous Fringe. Guys, please check out Chris's channel. It's very cool. If you go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/James Hershey Jr., if you click on the Venomous Fringe show that Old Boy did, in the description of that video is the link to Chris's channel. So click that and go check his channel out. It's a lot of really cool stuff. A lot of fun stuff. You'll really like it. We have a website for all of our merch. It is teespring.com/store/staring into the abyss. If you're in the market for merch and you want to check it out, that's a great site. Once again, it is teespring.com. That's TEE spring, SPRING.com/store/staring into the abyss. Thank you guys so much for all the support. Thank you for all the love. And until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.